I'm Carmine Gallo with Kevin Evers. We are talking everything Taylor Swift today. Well, not everything. That would be a very long catalog. Specifically, the principles that apply to entrepreneurs, leaders, aspiring leaders, anybody who wants to get ahead. Because Kevin wrote, "There's nothing like this, the strategic genius of Taylor Swift." And Kevin should know a lot about strategy because he is a senior editor at Harvard Business Review. Kevin, I'm curious, when an editor of the Harvard Business Review pitches a book on Taylor Swift, what's the reaction?
Mixed reaction. Some people got it right away. Other people were like, Taylor Swift, are you sure HBR wants to be writing a book about Taylor Swift? And my answer was an emphatic yes, we should be writing a book about Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift has conquered the music industry over the last 20 years, and it's a really harsh and brutal industry. And not many people can say that. So I didn't approach this book any differently than I would if I was writing a book about Steve Jobs or Jeff Bezos.
Mm-hmm. Two books that I've written, two subjects I've written about, Steve Jobs and Jeff Bezos.
You beat me to them, so I went for Taylor Swift.
Absolutely, because she's an innovator in her field and has so many lessons, as you point out in the book. I'd like to stick to a topic that I think applies to everyone, especially the people I reach, entrepreneurs, leaders, anyone who wants to get more out of life and to be successful in their career. And that's the topic of vision. There's an entire chapter devoted just to vision. It comes up a lot in your book. You write that Taylor Swift's vision was so strong, it gave her the conviction to make bold, unconventional, and risky decisions. Let's break that down. Was it about her vision that allowed her to do that and played a role in her sustained success?
I firmly believe that we wouldn't be here today talking about Taylor Swift if she hadn't had such a clear vision earlier on in her career. We're talking she was 13, 14, 15 years old at this point. And her vision was she wanted to write her own songs, and she wanted to write those songs for an audience of her peers. Now, that may sound simple, but people in country music did not think that was the right strategy because she was so young. So most artists don't actually write their own songs. It's done by professional songwriters. And country music, the executives and the gatekeepers at radio did not believe that there's an audience for teenage girls. But Taylor persisted. She knew that her friends loved her songs, and she knew that as a fan of country music, that she wasn't seeing herself in the songs that she was listening to on country radio. And she knew that there could be a great audience for her in country music. And that vision really, really propelled her to go through some hardships, go through some challenges, and really push through a lot of that negativity and a lot of that skepticism that was coming her way.
Well, Kevin, that explains another story in the book about a songwriter who worked with her. And the songwriter said she, Taylor Swift, knew exactly who she was. She knew exactly what she wanted to say. She knew exactly where she was going. And then the songwriter added, that's the number one thing I look for. If they have a vision and a focus of who they are, that blows everything else away. I firmly believe this, and which is why I gravitated to that section of the book, because in any field, if you do not have a vision, a North Star, it's easy to get distracted. And it's easy to lose focus. What's interesting about the Taylor Swift angle is that now young women writing songs about themselves or other young women, well, that's pretty common. But what you're saying is at the time when Taylor Swift broke in and she's like 13, 14-year-old songwriter, that wasn't the case. That was innovative at the time.
Especially in country music. It was not common in country music. And country music is a very tight culture. It's loosened up a bit lately, but we're talking about 2006. Country music really holds on to its norms and traditions. And at the time, country music was very male-dominated. 80% of the hits on country radio were performed by men, and men will perform 4 to 5 times more than women on radio. There were some other teen artists, Leanne Rimes in particular, that did break out early, but they didn't have much longevity. So that was the consensus. There's no way that a teen artist performing music for teens could find success.
There's a story in the book, a great story that I think encapsulates so much about Taylor Swift's vision, determination, and it also teaches us some profound lessons. I think you know which one I'm talking about. They were two songwriters. They were nearly 50 years old, and so they accepted an assignment to co-write with this young, promising talent, Taylor Swift. I think she was 13 years old at the time. Swift later said she knew that they were going to come to the session doubting her ability. Completely understandable. 30-year-olds working with a 13-year-old girl. And so she came armed with 15 or 20 almost finished song ideas. This is the great story. At one point, one of the songwriters, again, someone much older, a lot of hits, has a lot of experience in the business, threw out some lyrics. They were brainstorming some lyrics. And Taylor said, this is a 13-year-old girl, I don't know. That's kind of trite. And instead of seeing her as arrogant or full of herself, they walked away impressed. Kevin, what does that story say about Taylor Swift and vision? And what does that teach the rest of us?
I think we've all been in situations where we have a pretty strong opinion about something or we have a clear vision, but we get into a room, we get into a conference room, and people don't agree with us. There's not consensus, and we stand down. And Taylor has always had the reputation of being a great collaborator. But we can see in this story that those songwriters, again, who are much older than her, were trying to push her in a direction that she wasn't comfortable with, and a direction that didn't quite fit into her vision. She pushed back. And that's not something that all of us do, no less a 13-year-old girl at the time. So I think that's why those older songwriters were, one, taken back, but also thoroughly impressed with her ability to push for her own idea. Because I work in book publishing and I work with a lot of authors, and it's really rare for someone to have such a clear vision for what they want to do. And Taylor did that, and she was very young, but because she had that clear vision, she was really able to push for her ideas and not get knocked in a direction that her fans wouldn't appreciate.
I'm glad you brought up your experience in book publishing. This is why I'm saying the Taylor Swift book that you wrote and a lot of lessons apply to everybody. You just said something that surprised me, that a lot of authors who come to you or pitch ideas, you're surprised they don't have a clear vision. So again, it's not just a 14-year-old songwriter. It's people in every age, in every career. I am shocked too at how many people lack a very clear vision for where they want to go or the type of content they want to produce, if it's in marketing or anything creative.
I'm not shocked when people come to me without a clear vision. It just happens so much.
I'm shocked that it happens.
I'm shocked when I'm shocked that when they do have such a clear vision, because it's such an anomaly to me. And I think having such a clear vision is an anomaly in some ways. I've only experienced it once or twice in my own life, but you know it when you feel it. It's a bodily sensation. You can feel it in your nerves. You can feel it in your bones. When you do have that feeling, I think it's really critical to recognize it and to follow it as much as possible because it is so rare.
Excellent.
But I also think it needs to be strength-based.
It needs to be what based?
Strength-based. It really needs to be based on what your own unique strengths are. And that's what Taylor did, because she and her team realized that she was a great songwriter and that she could connect with her fans in a very intimate and vulnerable way, in ways that other songwriters, especially older songwriters and performers, couldn't do. So that's really where the vision came from. They didn't conjure it up in a marketing meeting or a board meeting. They knew what Taylor was really, really good at, and then they chased that, and that's where the vision came from.
Kevin, this might be a really hard question to answer. I'm sure you've thought of it. How do you balance having the strength and conviction of a clear vision and being a great collaborator at the same time, as Taylor Swift is?
That's really, really hard to do. I think with Taylor, if the collaboration is trying to enhance what she's good at, if it's trying to enhance her vision or help her realize her vision, then I imagine she's open to all sorts of feedback. Once that feedback starts taking her away from her vision and what she's really good at, those are the situations where I imagine she would push back. And we saw that in that story that you mentioned.
You cite Michael Gervais. Is that the way you pronounce it?
Gervais. Yep.
Gervais, who is a psychologist. He's worked with elite athletes and CEOs. And I believe he wrote something for the Harvard Business Review where he highlights the pivotal role of clarity in high performers. Quote is, because of their clarity, high performers are more willing to push themselves, learn more, and embrace discomfort. They can shut out the noise and opinions of fans and media and listen to their own well-calibrated internal compass. So I imagine that's what Swift was doing when she first broke into Nashville. She saw that blind spot at the time, like you said, young women who write their own songs for other young women from their own personal experiences. And that was very innovative at the time. But how can the rest of us who are not songwriters, who are not pop idol sensations, how do the rest of us apply this power of clarity to our lives and our careers?
It's such a great question. It's such a big question. And I'd go back to what I said a little bit earlier. When you have that feeling, when you have that sense of clarity, you need to chase it. You really do. You need to embrace it and you need to chase it because it doesn't happen so often. But when it does, you really need to hold on to it. And that sense of clarity it can serve as such a great compass for us.
Yeah.
As you move forward and make decisions. Because we all know we live in a world of uncertainty. We live in a world of noise. There's so many distractions. But if you have that sense of clarity, you will make much better decisions. You'll be a better collaborator and you'll be able to pivot and change because you know the direction that you want to move in.
Let's talk about one of my favorite topics, storytelling. I write about storytelling from a business perspective, and I've admired Taylor Swift's songs for a long time because of not only her songwriting ability, but the way she uses words and especially metaphors to evoke strong emotions. But in your book, Kevin, you go much further, showing us how her storytelling is both artistic and strategic. There's one example in particular. I love all the examples you bring up. When she wrote Tim McGraw, still one of my favorite songs, still on my playlist, she uses the country music icon Tim McGraw as a metaphor for, let's just say, a lost love, okay? Or a reminder of a lost love. Now, you said in the book that Tim McGraw was both a nod to country tradition and a Trojan horse for her own voice. That sounds very deliberate on her part.
I'm not sure how deliberate it was, but I know her team did have to sit around at a certain point, and that was her first single. And they had to decide, this is the first time that we're going to introduce Taylor Swift to the world. And that first song is critical to any artist, especially a first-time artist. So they decided to go with Tim McGraw. And I imagine they went with Tim McGraw for a couple of reasons. The first reason is country music radio, the programmers and the DJs were skeptical of Swift because she was a teenager. But Tim McGraw is a very traditional country song. I'd argue it's Taylor Swift's most country song. So it was very familiar. So it made radio programmers and DJs comfortable. It's the type of song that they heard before. But it still had Swiftian twists to it. Calling the song Tim McGraw, it's so hyper-specific. That's a very Taylor thing to do.
Yeah.
And it's very novel. And the fact that the song was about a teenager breaking up with her boyfriend who was going off to college was also a very Swiftian choice too.
Yeah.
So it's familiar enough to get radio and the country music traditionalists to embrace the song, but it was novel enough to catch people's attention too. And that's why it was such a great choice.
Excellent. Yeah, just there's so many great stories in the book. Obviously, she reinvents herself, goes on to do the Eras Tour, the largest selling concert tour of all time. There's so many layers to her, and that's why I think she's endlessly fascinating. So, Kevin, one question for you. Let me end on this. While you were writing the book, who's the audience? Because I looked at a book like this really for people like myself, too, creatives, entrepreneurs. I looked at this as a business book, a strategic business book.
Yep.
Is that part of the audience you had in mind? It's not just Swifties. This isn't
not
just
just
a bio.
Swifties, but Swifties are a huge audience for the book. I want Swifties to buy it and love it, and so many of them have been in contact with me and say that they
Good,
do love
great.
it,
Yeah,
which is-
well, the
which is
stories
great.
are terrific. Yeah, it really gives you an insight.
And part of Taylor Swift's star persona is her business savviness. If you ask fans what they appreciate most about her, I guarantee that's one of the top 3 things that they'll say, and that's unique for a music artist. I also wanted people to read the book who are just wondering, how is it that Taylor Swift has been able to do what she's been able to do?
Yeah.
Right? But the third audience is the audience that you just talked about. I want creatives, I want entrepreneurs to read the book too, because there's so much that we can learn from Taylor Swift.
There really is. And there's nothing like her, nothing like this. Kevin, thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Great book and a fun conversation. So much to
Yeah.
learn, like you said.
Thank you so much.